The following action research report was undertaken during a primary professional practicum at Kings Langley Public School within a Stage 3 Year 6 class. Whilst reflecting on my first 2 weeks block of practicum, I posed a question to myself: what is something I would like to see change in the classroom to increase student engagement, and how could I achieve this in a short amount of 4 weeks? For this, I chose to incorporate the MEE framework of looking at student motivation, engagement, and the notion that school is for me. The question posed for my action research project is: will the use of brain breaks in mathematics lessons increase in student engagement and productivity in independent tasks? The action research took place at Kings Langley Public School. Kings Langley Public School is located in Sydney's northwest in the suburb of Kings Langley. Kings Langley is part of the Sydney Hills District and the Greater Western Region. Currently, there are 721 students enrolled at Kings Langley Public School, with 30 classroom teachers and 6 supporting teachers. Kings Langley Public School is a very high achieving school with its community backing these high expectations. Kings Langley Public School has a very strong and supportive connection with its P&C. Together with the parents, students, and staff, Kings Langley Public School has a strong reliant freeway partnerships which is maintained. Behaviour management at Kings Langley Public School is scarce, with a current rate of less than 1 short suspension school-wide per year. Kings Langley Public School also has an abundance of ICT resources, with 150 iPads, 150 laptops, and class computers and Wi-Fi in every room. Over the course of my 2-week block of practicum, I found that long, silent, independent textbook work was often used in the teaching of mathematics. Mathematics was taught over 7 hours a week in the Stage 3 classes. 2 of these hours were taught in maths groups self-teaching, where all Stage 3 students were placed in academically graded groups and taught in separate classes across the stage. This was taught once a week in a 2-hour middle session. The other 5 hours of mathematics were taught in class in 1-hour blocks. Most of these 1-hour blocks would consist of students gathering on the floor and the teacher modelling to students a concept in which they were to be taught. The teacher and student would then discuss the strategies used in the concept and where they would use this concept. The teacher would then give a whole class or small group hands-on activity on the floor for students to complete. This would usually consist of mini whiteboards and collaborative student work. Once this task was completed and majority of the students understood the concept, students were sent back to the table to complete the assigned textbook pages relating to the concept. This would take up the remainder of the lesson, usually 35 to 40 minutes. Towards the middle end of the 35 to 40 minutes independent work, students would often become disruptive, unfocused, and distracted to other students. For my research, I collected work samples of 2 lower-end students, consisted of 2 middle-range learners, and 2 higher-end learners. I intentionally selected lessons taught with brain breaks. The effects of the brain breaks varied. When doing action research, I highlighted certain characteristics to evidence in order to test the validity of knowledge claims. This was achieved through observation, knowledge and understanding teacher of the implication of learning of students' physical, cultural, social, linguistics, and intellectual characteristics should be taken into consideration. It can be seen in the table that not only a range of academic students were chosen as a part of the action research project, but a range of physical abilities of the students was also considered. This included sporting abilities, students who are more reserved in class, and students who are engaged frequently in class discussions, also students that have a very positive outlook on learning, and other students who do not always apply themselves on set tasks. My research consists of comparing previous mathematics lessons taught without brain breaks to lessons taught with brain breaks. McNiff states when doing action research, he gathered data to generate evidence in order to test the validity of knowledge claims. This was achieved through observation, records of teacher-student conversation, work samples, and student self-assessment. By having varying sets of data allows for varying records of the action research implemented. Observational notes taken by myself are subjective. The work samples are factual accounts of the research and results taking place. After the completion of the action research project, all student data was collated and distributed into tables. This allowed for comparing across students and separate forms of data. For example, the observations, teacher-student conversations, the work samples, and the self-assessment done by students. From the observational notes provided, we can see that students were distracted after the first brain break on the 3rd of July 2019. Students were distracted for a short time as they were confused as to why they were involved in a brain break. Although a week into using brain breaks in lessons, students were found to be more settled. A positive shift in student body language was noticeable from the start. This indicated to myself that emotional engagement was achieved post the brain break. This was as students were sitting more upright at the desk, and overall happy vibe was felt across the classroom as students immediately enjoyed the brain break. A record of the teacher-student conversation after the first brain break was recorded. Although students had a positive response to the brain break, they stated that prior to stopping their brain was hurting, implying that the independent textbook period was too long for students. Students also stated that the whole body movement during the brain break was effective. This was interesting as sport was recorded as a key characteristic for my students. Students also felt more awake post the brain break. Overall, positive impact was had by the brain break. Looking at the work samples of students across the lesson that did not include the brain break and did include the brain break, an obvious shift can be seen in the lower achieving students and the middle range students. For the higher achieving students, no change can be seen. The lower achieving students often fell short of completing all set tasks required of them. Middle range students often only completed half of the set tasks required of them. Once the brain breaks were implemented in mathematics, an increase of work can be seen from these students. Also, increase of students answering questions correctly shows an increase, thus a motivation towards students wanting to do their work. Finally, looking at student self-assessment, data was collected. Here, students were asked 4 questions. Did you like the brain breaks chosen? Why? Why not? Did you enjoy having brain breaks in mathematics lessons? Why? Did you find yourself more motivated to complete the set work after the brain breaks? And did you feel you achieved a greater academic outcome and were more engaged in the tasks when brain breaks were used? Why and why not? Students had varied responses to the question. Overall, all students responded well with their reaction towards the brain break. In addition, when asked for their self-assessment and academic outcome, students achieved everything they wanted and the mental brain break was something they needed was recorded. One student also stated that her motivation to do better and the brain break had a positive impact on her emotionally. Although it was brought up by one student that the brain break also acted as a distraction as it was too fun and they wanted to keep doing the brain break. This was interesting. One of the key brain breaks chosen to implement was the Olympic version of rock, paper, scissors. This brain break required vigorous student movement, including fast-paced movement around the class, students jumping, and students forming whole-body movements. Looking back on this student self-assessment, we can see that this was one of the most popular brain breaks with students. This may be a reflection on the characteristics of many of the students chosen, as they were sporting inclined. Looking at the pedagogical trend to increase student movement, brain breaks such as rock, paper, scissors can be used to increase student physical activity. Gapper states that physical activity plays an important role in the neuromuscular development, energy balance, and obesity prevention among children in the early years. Thus, targeting these brain breaks at primary school aged children can assist in these areas, as the development between 6 and 12 years is recognized as the golden period of motor development, where students acquire most habits which are used in their adulthood. In addition, physical activity can offer individuals an opportunity to develop a cheerful and joyous spirit, and providing a source of enjoyment. This can be seen in the research focus as students said they felt more happier and the brain breaks made them feel more awake. It was also recorded in the observational notes that the brain breaks students were smiling and giggling. Thus, implementing frequent brain breaks, such as rock, paper, scissors, could become one of the most effective strategies to increase students' level of physical education in the schooling environment. As research suggests, physical activity has a positive influence on the self-esteem of students, which could lead to broadening cognitive and behavioral coping strategies, such as problem solving. Not only do many mathematicals tie in closely with problem solving, this can be seen across multiple KLAs. Finally, a number of studies have reported that physical activity during the classroom lessons improves school engagement, specifically time on task during the classroom lesson. This could be seen as an increase of completion of work set tasks that was recorded in the student work samples. The MEE framework refers to students' motivation, the individual support strategies, E for engagement, the learning experiences, and the capital E linking to the notion that school is for me and the engaging messages. These MEE frameworks should be implemented in classrooms, and it allows for teachers to reflect on our practice and not necessarily change it but alter it to cater for the particular student needs. Research shows that improved student learning outcomes has come from the MEE framework when it is implemented by teachers. Upon reflecting on the key findings of the action research, it is found that student motivation was indeed increasing, as the lower achieving and middle range students' completion of their work rate was higher. Through the longer periods of independent working, students lost their initial engagement with the task, and the brain break served as a way for students to stop and re-engage in the task. Research shows that links between student engagement and their perception of the workload are closely tied. Thus, breaking down the working times allows for students to re-examine their workload and thus re-engage in the set work. Engaging students in academic activities is critical for the overall success of students' experiences. Finally, the notion that school is for me. Having fun in an activity, specifically catering for student needs, increases their enjoyment of school and their perception that school is indeed for me. This also has potential for students to develop a stronger teacher bond. Moving on to the short and long-term implications of having brain breaks in the classroom. The short-term implications of brain breaks in the classroom include increased motivation and engagement of students. This can be seen in the completion of the set tasks assigned by teachers, as this was increased when brain breaks were used in the class. Although this would require a variety of physical brain breaks, as physical brain breaks were shown to be more effective to students, this would fall back on the teacher. Some long-term implications include a lifelong habit of taking frequent breaks in set tasks and associating those breaks with full body movement. This would allow for a healthy lifestyle habit. This can be used in high school, university, and even in the workplace. By developing this lifelong habit of taking frequent physical activity brain breaks, it could also impact on one's mental health, as it was stated before that cheerful and joyous spirit is often associated with physical activity and breaking. By developing this in the early years of 6 to 12 primary school age, we are targeting the golden period of motor development, where children acquire most habits which are used in their adulthood. Looking at the results of my action research project, they are very pleasing, but several variables must be taken into consideration. These include the mathematical concepts taught. I only taught 4 concepts out of the whole syllabus for stage 3. The 6 students chosen out of the 30 students in my class, and the brain breaks chosen. Finally, the set mathematical tasks assigned by the teacher to the students. Although going off this data collected, it can be seen that the use of brain breaks in mathematical lessons did indeed increase student engagement and productivity in the classroom. Through examination of current pedagogical trends, physical activity brain breaks fits in with the pedagogy of increasing student movement. This increases both students' mental and physical health. As stated previously, implementing this in primary school age students has a variety of lifelong benefits in both physical activity and academic achievement. Looking at the MEE framework, brain breaks found were motivating and engaging to the students as the completion of independent tasks increased and students were found to have a more positive outlook on personal tasks. Students had a more positive outlook on their classwork as well. For further development of my research focus in regards to brain breaks, I would begin by sampling again, this time different age students, academic achievement and characteristics, and collating and comparing their data. I would also sample this across a variety of KLAs. In addition, I would re-evaluate and further build upon my theory of student engagement. The perception of the workload is closely linked with student engagement, was the outlook that I looked. I would work on this and look into this further. Overall, I found this experience very rewarding and extremely insightful, and amazing how brain breaks have such an impact on students. Here is the following list of references used in the completion of my task. Looking at Appendix 1, I have collected evidence of myself participating in a focus group with fellow university pre-service teachers. Here we discussed how we documented our data, how we refined our focus question, the long and short term implications of our focus project, and our key findings. We communicated via iMessage and also face-to-face meetings. Appendix shows the ethical side of my research project. Here I have attached the 8 signed consent forms. Forms from the principal at Kings Langley Public School, forms signed by my mentor teacher, and also the forms of the guardians of my 6 selected students. Appendix 3 shows the brain breaks used in my research project. The brain breaks included Would You Rather, a questioning game, and also the Olympic rock, paper, scissors. Finally, my submissions page and declaration that I have completed this assignment. Thank you.